If it doesn't have spice in it, I don't want it. What's up everyone, it's my Chua and welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about some of the spiciest books I've ever read. Now I am all in for a good, smutty, spicy romance, right? But I am also a reader who needs a good plot to go with the spice. So with that said, the books that I'll be recommending today do have a lot of spice in it, but they do also have a good plot. Now obviously people have different spice skills, right? And so the books that I'll be recommending today may be super spicy to some people and maybe super vanilla to others, okay? So without further ado, let's get into the recommendations for this video. The first book on my list is Credence by Penelope Douglas, and Penelope Douglas is one of the first authors that I've started to read like right when I started my reading journey, right? So she pretty much set the spice scale for me, right? And when I first picked up her books, I thought that they were just like off the charts spicy. So back to Credence, I think this might be the spiciest book she's written, okay? So this book follows our main character Tiernan, and she was left in the world all by herself after her parents committed suicide together. So now there's not really any like relatives or guardians that will take her in, right? She is kind of like still underage. I believe she's only like 17 when the book starts. One day she receives this call from this guy that she has never met before, right? And he claims to be her step uncle. And so we know him as Uncle Jake. During this call, Uncle Jake is like, I heard about the news. I am your father's step brother, right? And so if you would like to, we are an option and you can come stay with me and my 2 sons. At this point, Tiernan's just like, okay, I have nothing else to lose. I have nowhere else to go. So why not go live with these 3 strangers in this secluded cabin in the woods? And that is exactly what she ends up doing. Uncle Jake is obviously the first person that she meets, right? And then when she gets back to the cabin, she meets Noah for the first time as well. Noah is more of the talkative and outgoing type, right? He's just like, hey, my name is Noah. Who are you? What are you doing here? And he's just trying to get to know Tiernan, right? Caleb, on the other hand, doesn't really make an appearance until like several chapters in, okay? And so when Tiernan and Caleb meet for the first time, things are awkward. They have this whole weird scene going on. Pretty much, Tiernan does have to adjust to her new life and adjust to the cabin in the woods kind of setting, okay? And throughout the book, we see that Tiernan develops these relationships with each one of these men, okay? I don't think this is a spoiler, but Tiernan does end up with one of the guys at the end, okay? So this was definitely a wild book, but I had such a good time reading it as well. I really enjoyed the whole premise of the story. The next book is also by Penelope Douglas, and this is actually a series, right? So this is the whole Devil's Night series. In this series, we are following 4 different couples and they each get their own book. It's kind of hard to talk about this whole series without divulging in the plot, okay? So each book does have its own separate plot, but I guess in general, this whole series revolves around Devil's Night, okay? Devil's Night is the night before Halloween, okay? So on this night, we have our heroes who we call the 4 horsemen. Our heroes are Michael, Kai, Damon, and Will, okay? So every year on Devil's Night, our 4 horsemen would pull these pranks in the town that they are living in, right? It's kind of like a tradition that they do every single year, right? And so on this one year in particular, things go down south, okay? And some of the horsemen are sent to jail. Just from that one night, things have forever changed, right? So each book of these series kind of alternate between the past and the present to see what had happened in between. I think I'm going to just leave it at that, right? You kind of have to just read the whole series from start to end to really understand what's going on, okay? But I promise this series was definitely very spicy on certain books, if you know what I mean. There were a lot of twists in this series as well, right? There were things that I did not see coming at all, and I was really pleasantly surprised by them. The next book on my list is also by Penelope Douglas, and this is Birthday Girl. Okay, so like I've said before, because I feel like she was the author to introduce me into a lot of the spicier books, I feel like at the time when I was reading them, it was actually very, very spicy. Okay, so if I were to go back and read these books again, I might not think that they were as spicy as I thought the first time around, right? But I'm gonna keep them on this list because that's how I feel about them currently. Back to Birthday Girl. So we are following Jordan, who is our main heroine in this book, okay? And at the beginning of this book, we know that she is in this long-term relationship with her boyfriend. Currently, she is at the movies and she's waiting for her boyfriend to meet her there so that they can watch a movie together on her birthday. But of course, her boyfriend never shows up, and so she ends up meeting our hero there, who is called Pike. Now, Pike is obviously several years older than Jordan, right? And so this is definitely an age gap romance. But while they're at the movies, they kind of just hit it off and they're just like, you know, having a good time together. A few days later, Jordan and her boyfriend are kicked out of their apartment, right? So I guess they couldn't make up the rent for it, and so now they have to go live with her boyfriend's dad. And we know that they don't have this really good relationship together, right? And so her boyfriend is kind of reluctant, but at this point, he can't really do anything about it. As they both show up at the dad's house, Jordan realizes that his dad was the guy that she met at the movies the other night, right? And so this obviously complicates everything. This is an age gap romance. It's a ex-boyfriend's dad romance, and the tension in this book was so good. Like, this book was definitely a slow burn romance, but you can feel the sexual tension and everything throughout the whole book. And once they finally do get together, it was just like, I don't know, explosive. It was just like, finally our main characters are together. Speaking of ex-boyfriend's dad romances, right? And so I have another romance for you, and it's called Appraise by Sara, Cate. This is the first book of the Salacious Players Club, and I believe they all just came out this year, actually. I literally just finished the audio of this book today, right? And I wanted to include it in this video because I definitely enjoyed that one as well. In this book, we're following Charlotte and Emerson, okay? So Charlotte had just recently broken up with her boyfriend, Beau, and we obviously know that Emerson is Beau's father, okay? And she's trying to collect her portion of the security deposit on their apartment, okay? So Beau's just like, okay, this was under my dad's name, you gotta go get it from my dad because they sent the money to him. Now, Emerson, we know that he is this part owner of the Salacious Players Club, okay? So I think he's like an owner with, I think, 4 or 5 other members. Pretty much this club is a kink club, okay? So a lot of different people go there to kind of explore these different kinks. Now, just from that alone, you should know that this is going to be a spicy series, right? Emerson has this very specific praise kink, right? So he likes to praise his sexual partners. Back to Charlotte, okay? So she goes over to Emerson's house, and immediately he tells her to get on her knees, right? And obviously she's just like, okay, this is weird, but if this is what it takes to get my money back, then I'll do it, right? When he realizes that she is not the person he thought she was, he's just like, oh my god, I am so sorry, like, get up right now, you're Beau's girlfriend, right? And in Charlotte's mind, she's just like, hey, you know what, it's okay, I actually kind of enjoyed that, right? And so she realizes that she has this praise kink as well. And so this book is definitely full of like sexy time. It was definitely full of a lot of tension. It wasn't as slow burn as Birthday Girl, right? But it was still a very fun time. I will for sure continue on with the books in this series as well. The next recommendation I have is called American Queen by Simone. And this is a romance between our main character, Greer, the president and the vice president of the United States. Greer had this grandfather who was the former vice president of the United States, right? And so she was introduced to like the whole political world and everything like that at a very young age. One night she attends this political event with her grandfather, and there she meets Ash, who is a very mysterious guy. He is very experienced, and he's several years older than Greer. On that night, they do share a very like memorable moment together, right? But it seems like they never got a chance to connect after that night. And so several years have passed, and now we are in present day, and now Ash is actually the president of the United States. One day, Ash decides to send out his vice president to kind of seek out Greer, right? But the thing about this vice president is that he had also had a past with Greer as well. So we know him as Embry. Now at this point, Greer is left to kind of sort out her feelings for both of these men. So we do get a very complicated relationship in this romance, right? And at times I was like, okay, I know where this is going, but at times I was very, very pleasantly surprised with how things went. So we do have this kind of love triangle thing going on, right? And this book was very, very spicy, but it was very enjoyable regardless. The next recommendation I have is part of a duet, and I believe it's called like The Devil's Playground Duet by Ashley Jade. They have 2 books in this duet, and you really do have to read both of them to understand what's going on, right? And I don't want to give too much away, so I think what I'm going to do is just kind of introduce the characters of this story. First off, we have Eden, who is our main heroine, and she had this mother who had passed away like, I believe it was like a year ago for when the book started. And so now she's currently living with her stepfather, who we know as Cain. Eden and Cain, however, do not have a simple relationship, okay? So I guess this is kind of where it gets a little bit twisted and a little bit messed up, because Eden has feelings towards Cain and she kind of wants to pursue a relationship with him. Cain does have these feelings towards Eden as well, right? But he is currently trying to run for mayor for their town, and so he doesn't really want to do anything that would tarnish his reputation. And he's just like, okay, first off, you're kind of still under age. Let's wait a couple years until you're older, and let's wait until this election is over with. And then we have our third character, who is called Damien, right? And he is a very important person to this story as well. But I don't even know how to introduce him, because I feel like he will be a major spoiler to like the whole plot of the story. So I'm just gonna say that he is also a very important character as well. And I think I'm going to just leave it at that. Like, there's obviously so much more going on in this story, but I don't want to say too much. Like, it's a very twisted, and there are things that come out of left field that you're just like, whoa, you're not expecting at all, right? So I would suggest that you go into this book blindly so that you can get the full like outcome of this story. This was definitely a very twisted and taboo story. It was very, very spicy as well. There were times where you're just like, you gotta throw your woman feminism out of the window and just enjoy the story for what it was. The last recommendation I have is a very recent read, and it's actually part of a series. So it's called The Wolf Hotel series by Nina West, or also known as K.A. Tucker. In this series, we're following our main heroine, Abby, and she was raised in this very small town. Her family was very, very religious as well, and so we have this very inexperienced, very naive, and a virgin heroine. Pretty much at the start of this book, we know that Abby was in this relationship with this boy, right? And they were together for several years. Everybody thought that they were going to get married. He did propose to her, so technically I guess he is like her fiance. But she finds out that he had cheated on her, so now she has these conflicted feelings. She's just like, oh, I thought my life and future was all planned out, but now I'm not so sure anymore. Abby decides to kind of spread her wings and branch out, right? She's just like, okay, maybe there's more for me outside of this small town. She decides to take on this position at this very famous hotel chain called the Wolf Hotels. And so this is actually out of town for her. It's in a whole different state. I believe it's like in Alaska, and she decides to move there for this new position. As she is adjusting to her new lifestyle and her new career, she actually meets the CEO of Wolf Hotels, and we know him as Henry Wolf. We also know that he is this billionaire guy. He is very hot, and he is obviously a player, right? We have a billionaire romance. We have a very experienced hero who is going to teach our heroine about sex and relationships and like intimacy, right? This seems like your typical rich guy and shy, naive girl story, right? But I promise you, the first book in this series was super, super spicy, but it gets even spicier after that as the story goes on. I promise that this is a good time. It was very, very wild, very, very spicy, and you would not regret reading this series at all. Alright, so those were all of the recommendations I had for this video. Do let me know if you read any of these books as well and if you thought that they were as spicy as I thought. Definitely let me know if you also have any spicy book recommendations for me and drop them in the comments below. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for being here. As always, please do like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.